And thank you, Mr. Mason, for being here tonight. We are now ready for the second part of the forum. We're going to jump right over with wasting no time. Second part, we have the District 10 Oklahoma representative candidates, Anthony Tucker and Travis Dunlap. The District 10 Oklahoma House seat is held by retiring Representative Steve Martin. This is a 2-year term. The salary is $38,400. The opening remarks will begin with Mr. Tucker. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. My story starts and ends with education. Growing up in a blue-collar family on the west side of Bartlesville, my mom and dad raised me to understand that education was my future and my way out. Through excelling in education, I would trailblaze a new path for my family members and people in like situations to follow. This parable from my mother was the truth, as I became the first in my family of 6 to receive a bachelor's degree and to attend graduate school. My journey from escaping living below or slightly above poverty was not an easy one. It was one that would not have been reached without passionate teachers, teachers that pushed me to be better, teachers that cared about me as an individual, and teachers that inspired me with their passion for leading others. Teachers from common education and higher education fueled my passion to lead others. And for that, I am forever indebted to the growth and prosperity of our public education system and our teachers in Oklahoma. Having a strong passion and background for growing local businesses and growing communities, I can speak of the financial benefits of an educated workforce. A community with a strong public education system will produce more college graduates, advanced certificate holders, and overall a more qualified workforce. A qualified workforce that will be essential for maintaining and growing current economic and business performance, in addition to helping attract new businesses and jobs into a community. A highly educated individual is less likely to live below or at poverty levels and has the potential to earn higher hourly wages than individuals who are less educated within their field of work, thus helping improve the flow of money throughout the community by increasing the amounts of discretionary monies available per person. Local job holders are the individuals that sustain and grow a local economy. Bottom line, education is economics. I strongly believe that the one thing that is recession-proof is funding public education. Teachers and leadership are that vital source for empowering and inspiring the future leaders of Oklahoma. And I want to see these individuals receive adequate pay for their invaluable service and properly taken care of after retirement from their service. It's not only just the right thing to do, my fellow Oklahomans. It makes economic and financial sense. As your elected leader for OK House District 10, you can rest assured that my objectives are simple. To improve Oklahoma's funding per pupil, yes, we're first in cut since 2008. We all know that. Fund new innovative learning programs that involve technology for our kids in impoverished areas where I grew up in Oak Park, to give me access and give kids like me who grew up in a similar situation to technology. To help adequately pay teachers before, during, and after their service, just like OU's been doing. They've been funding and giving incentives for people to want to become teachers. And I also want to serve as the real small business advocate, what our Lieutenant Governor, Todd Lamb, is not doing right now. A small business is not 500 employees. A small business is 10 to 100 employees, and that's a leading job provider here in the state of Oklahoma. And I know because I serve those businesses on a daily basis. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Dunlap.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for once again having us and having me. I'm very happy that we have so many involved citizens here tonight. I am a fourth-generation Washington County resident, and because of this and because of growing up in this area, I feel like I have a good understanding of what Oklahomans and especially people in this area think about the proper role of government in their daily lives. After graduating from college, I served overseas in Southeast Asia as a missionary with the Baptist Church for a couple of years. And then upon my return to Bartlesville, which was my choice, I started a small business, and I operate that business now, as well as serve as music leadership at Bartlesville Southern Baptist Church and teach at the Oklahoma Wesleyan University. I'm running on a platform of life, freedom, family, and opportunity. I start with life because I believe that is the ultimate starting place. That is the ultimate ethic. That is the first right. That is the founders recognized as being endowed and inalienable. And so I start there, and I'm not a single issue voter, and I'll work with anybody who disagrees with me. But if somebody doesn't acknowledge along with me that life begins at conception and goes along to natural death, then I realize we're starting from different places. I also want to advocate for freedom, freedom, family, opportunity, freedom, and I do believe that smaller government is a better answer and a better way to operate society. The founders believed in the principles of limited government because of the tyrannical environments in which they had come from. I also believe in family. Oklahoma, I believe, has suffered a great tragedy in projecting our voice and our votes to define marriage as our Creator defines it. And then a judge in Colorado decided that the voices of the people honoring their Creator is not something that is going to happen in this state. And so I want to be an advocate for that. And finally, opportunity. I believe, as we've heard many times in the discussion already tonight, that opportunity is the key for so many things. And I want to work along with people who are already doing a good job, follow best practices, research those best practices, and then put them into place so that we can have opportunity that is so desperately needed here in our state.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. And you have the first question. I bet you wish you had the question the judges had, because there's 4 of them, and they're all about, guess what? Tax breaks. What are you feeling about tax cuts? Why are we getting tax breaks for the wealthiest? We've got $1 billion we're don't have in revenue anymore. What can be done to remedy the severe cuts to education? Go.
A lot of things. So there are essential functions of government that must be funded. And so we're going to be talking about a huge balancing act that has to take place every year. The amount of money that the legislature has available for discretionary purposes is actually quite limited compared to the amount that comes in to the state capitol. There's a lot that just is already promised and already allocated by the time it gets to the state legislature. I am an advocate for growth as a means of having the funding that we need. We talk about opportunity. I believe in limited government because limited government provides free markets an opportunity to flourish. And free markets flourishing means a greater economic activity. Greater economic activity means more inflow and resources that we can use as a collective. And so I do advocate and I follow along with the tax cuts that have been happening in our state recently. I believe they're responsible tax cuts that are triggered after appropriate funding comes in. And I believe in those because we've seen growth during the time of tax cuts taking place. And you know, it's kind of interesting. So many, as a citizen, it's hard to follow exactly what's being allocated down in Oklahoma City for the purposes here. When we get an income tax break, I know exactly where that's going. That's staying somewhere. That's not going anywhere, and that's being spent in local economies. And so I'm a believer in tax cuts, and I favor what the legislature has done to take that back.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Mr. Tucker.
I think there's some constitutional issues here. That bill that you're referencing, Travis, the Senate Bill 1246, was started where? In the Senate. All revenue bills are supposed to start in the House of Representatives, where we're trying to get into. And if you start a revenue-generating bill outside of the House and the Senate, you have to get 3/4 vote from the House. They did not get that. Mary Fallon our governor signed into action. So it is in the Supreme Court right now, and one of the Supreme Court justices said most recently, a couple days ago, she said, why won't they just follow the Constitution? The people that hand out constitutional Bibles, per se, are the people that don't understand it. Revenue bills must start in the House of Representatives. And I will tell you, the cuts to the wealthy, is that really going to work? You guys remember Reaganomics? I learned that in economics. I have a business degree. It doesn't work. We need cuts to the middle class, the people who do not have the discretionary funds, the people who are having to use state-funded health care, state-funded forms for getting the right adequate amount of food. Those are the individuals that need more discretionary funds. Those are the individuals that keep local businesses alive. And I can also say, when we talk about education, that really goes, I agree, it goes back to economics, but that's what I'm well-versed in. I serve the state of Oklahoma in developing rural economies. I've spent the past 2 years in NOWATA creating those opportunities you discussed. And I will tell you that we will get more funding by making sure that our communities are worth more. Because where does most of the funding come for education? Property taxes, right? Property taxes. So we need better communities. And I will tell you that that is going to come by us accepting the digital age, by businesses becoming more viable and being able to be found online, because people are going to Amazon because it's convenient. If I search for, some product, I want to make sure I find that local business so that I don't lose those tax dollars outside that local business community here in Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. The next question is yours first. It regards roads in Oklahoma. What can we do to improve them? More federal money? More toll roads?
You know, I'm never one to just wave the white flag and say, hey, help us out, federal government. I'm one for sustainable state government, and I feel that we just need to look at the motor fuel tax. And I will speak of an issue in reference to Nowata County. Nowata County is about to receive major improvement in their motor fuel taxes. And why? Because they're getting the most northern love station this side of northeast Oklahoma. And when doing that, there's going to be more fuel gallons of diesel and unleaded pumped. But because they don't have as much roads per se miles as Tulsa County, they're not going to see a lot of that money come back. And so when their county commissioners talk with me and they tell me what's the biggest issue, is they don't have funding to improve those county roads that school buses go down. Some of those roads in Nowata County and here in Washington County, I am scared on a daily basis for our kids to go down. And I'm telling you, in the state of Florida, they have a local option tax for motor fuel. And it gives that local community or county the option to tax up to 9 cents. And I'm not saying something that radical, but every penny from that local option tax and motor fuel for every gallon pumped goes back to that community, not to an algorithm that the bureaucrats in Oklahoma City decide. So if it's pumped here in Washington County, Osage County, Nowata County, it comes back here and we fix those roads.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Dunlap.
Infrastructure is essential to everything we do, and so we need to invest properly in infrastructure. Recently, the legislature has allocated the funds not in proportion to political persuasions, and so I'm very happy that we see less bickering going over where road funding is going and is going to the places where it needs the most. So I support whatever we can do at the state legislature to get our infrastructure as a means of being an attraction to people and a help to those same people.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dunlap. The next question is yours regarding the lottery. Has the lottery filled the original expectations for funding for education? If it didn't, what can be done?
I think the lottery has failed to deliver on its promises to fund education. And so I do, in terms of having a remedy for the lottery, I am not a proponent of continuing that, and I don't think it's good for Oklahoma. I don't think it's good as a form of taxation, and so if we're going to continue to depend on that and use that, it's going to continue to be an unreliable thing for us.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Mr. Tucker.
I completely agree. I've been throughout the county talking to superintendents of the different districts, and that's the first thing they talk about. Where's that lottery money they promised?
Yep.
Where's Governor Fallon have it tucked away? Is it in a rainy day fund, the general fund? Where's it at? You know what? We haven't seen any return from the lottery, and what good has the lottery done? Because who's buying those lottery tickets? People that shouldn't be buying it, right? Yeah, they're wasting their money. So I think we should get rid of that situation, and we should work on growing the economy, working with the private sector. And I think that leads into the leading job provider is that 10 to 100 employee business in Oklahoma. Let's allocate more funds to higher education institutions that have economic development councils, and they go out and work with those small businesses to help improve them. Let's fund the Oklahoma Manufacturing Alliance, my good friends there. That's how we're going to grow the economy and support education, not through lottery.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. The next question is yours. It relates to federal matching money. Which form of the federal matching money do you think is really the best deal for Oklahoma citizens?
In reference to education or reference to...
They have no specifics.
Okay, I will take that we're talking about the Affordable Care Act because I'm sure that's a big elephant in the room for everybody. And sure, I'm being a Democrat, you can see that I came prepared for that question. And I will tell you right now that our system is broken. Our current system, our state system is broken. All right, we need $90 million for fiscal year 2015 to continue the system that we have, which, based on numbers last year, last month was 817,000 individuals. 65% of those were children. Okay, those are kids that are on Sooner Care. Those are the kids that are on it. And I will tell you that our conservative friends in my aunt's state of Indiana, Governor Pence up there, he has started a state initiative that's kind of similar to our Insure Oklahoma plan, which is to help with that coverage crater, the people that don't fit into Sooner Care, but they can't really afford private coverage. And so he is trying to get funds from the federal government, just like he would if he would accept the quote-unquote Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare as people have termed it. And I feel that we need to look at something like that. Insure Oklahoma, our plan is only approved for a year-by-year basis. It recently was approved. But however, it's only for individuals below poverty. Before, it was for single individuals without dependents. That's the big difference. Without dependents, like Sooner Care. And those individuals can no longer make above poverty. And you're saying poverty, what, for one person, I mean, is what, $16,000, $17,000? It's not very much. I know the family of four offhand is like $23,000. Those individuals can't afford to go out and pay for premiums in a private insurance realm. That's just not going to happen. So we need to look at expanding a state-funded initiative. I say we move forward with taking funds, but only as Insure Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Dunlap.
As a conservative, I'd like to envision and just imagine what would it be like if we didn't have to go begging on our hands and knees to the federal government for just to take care of ourselves. That would be, as a conservative, something that sounds attractive to me, just because I don't think the federal government should have that much persuasion in my day-to-day life. That's, as a conservative, the way I think. However, in terms of availability of funds, you know, every tax dollar that comes from our pockets is ours. And so I have that perspective as well. And so if it's a tax dollar, we need to use and allocate those things in the way that is best for us. And so we need to work with what the system is and work towards ideals, sure, but be practical as well. I am aware that those who study what the Affordable Care Act will do in the near future are predicting that it's not a sustainable path forward. And so there's a large discussion that needs to take place. I have a way of thinking about the role of government in healthcare. I've presented that to you. I don't think the way forward is going to be sustainable, so we're going to have to do something, and we'll have to learn and follow best practices as we go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. The next question is yours. What do you think Oklahoma should do to monitor, control, or tax hydraulic fracking?
Monitor, control, or tax hydraulic fracking. Okay. This question might be in reference to the tax credits or tax breaks that are being extended. I think in general those have returned the bang for their buck in terms of how we allocate those. And so I'm thankful for them, and I'm thankful for the economic growth that's taken place because of it. I know that there are voices that are calling for the removal of those. I want to make sure that if we are looking at that as an option, that we do it in a way that is responsible, in a way that favors continued growth from that venture, from that exploration that's taking place.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Mr. Tucker?
I don't really think it's about the tax breaks. I think it's about all the earthquakes we've been feeling lately. I mean, when I was a kid, I was just worried about tornadoes. Where was I going to go? We didn't have a storm shelter. Now, when I had an earthquake happen to me when I was in my undergrad, I was looking at Megan thinking, where do we go? We don't go to a safe room. We don't go underground. It was just shaking. And it was right when the 6 o'clock news came on KOTV, Channel 6. And she was just shaking right there, too. And I tell you, it's kind of funny. We start doing horizontal drilling, and then all of a sudden we have earthquakes. So I think there's a correlation between those two. Who cares about the tax break? That's we know that we've given the oil and gas industry a huge tax break that could fund education 3 times over. But I think the concern is with our environment. We should lessen our carbon footprint in the world as a state. And that's something we're not doing. We're just ignoring it. Senator Inhofe on the federal level, he's ignoring it. But you cannot ignore the earthquakes that happen on a daily basis out of Jones, Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. The next question is regarding water sales. Do you think Oklahoma should sell water? Well, it says to Texas. Do you think we should sell water to anybody? And how should we be involved? And will we get the money? Water sales.
Simple answer, no. We should keep what we have. Yeah.
That's a quickie. Mr. Dunlap.
I'll actually refrain from too much comment on this as well. I think it's an issue that still needs to be discussed across state lines and just worked out. So I'm not going to answer. Sorry, whoever asked that question.
All right, we can do a couple more questions if they're all going to be this quick. All right, this one, I don't know to which they're referring. It's about combining state agencies, I'm assuming to save money since we're short. Would you support combining some of the state agencies? And they don't list any.
Yeah, we just need to see what's being proposed. If it's smart, then we'll do it. If it's not smart and won't serve the people well, we won't do it. I'm all for saving money and making government more efficient, but efficient doesn't mean conglomerating different functioning groups into one, always.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Mr. Tucker, combining agencies.
Yes, having worked for the state of Oklahoma, I can tell you there's a lot of waste within there. Having worked within economic development, the Department of Commerce, there's a lot of waste that we can clean up. We need to start running our government like a private business and be more efficient. Think about the bottom line. That's what we need to think about. I'm not saying that we don't care for our people and take care of them and love them, but if we need to start operating like it's a loss or a win, because that's how it is in the small business world for me. I either make money this month and I can make payroll, or I can't. So instead of just saying, oh, I'd like to have someone answer the phones for me, I don't know if I can pay for them, but they look nice there. That helps with business. We should really look at the different agencies and see where we could cut back. I'm not the one I don't want to go mass cuts, cut all a bunch of jobs for people who are hardworking individuals, but we do need to address it. And I think there are plenty of House subcommittees that Mr. Dunlap and I can find our way on to discuss this issue further.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. All right, you have the next question. Women's incarceration. Do you have any ideas for the ways for the state to reduce our high women's incarceration rate?
I guess I'll take that question. Really, that kind of leads into something that Judge Dunlap talked about, is that the Department of Mental Health and also the Department of Substance Abuse Services, they asked for $29 million this year, and they only got $2 million for their budget for fiscal year 2015. So it seems like the state, regardless of the gender, for female or for men, that we're willing to incarcerate them before we rehabilitate them. So that goes across gender borders. And I will tell you that something that also bothers me is the inequality within pay here in Oklahoma. An average person who works year-round 40 hours a week who is a male will make almost $10,000 more than a woman. So we have a bunch of inequalities that we need to fix, but we need to find a way to fund that department and make sure that we are proactive and not reactive to people who continue to get back into the system at a young age. We need more programs like Judge Dunlap's Run the Streets. That's what we need. So we need to find ways to fund those programs that, guess what, they're developed at a local level.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Dunlap, incarceration rates.
Yes, well, my first and primary answer is that our societal response to this need not lie solely in the government. And I know that was the question, but I just would like to acknowledge that before you all. The answer to this, the societal response to this is one of a religious or worldview nature. The community organizations in our town are going to best address those things that are not being done by the government, or maybe in terms of having a moral people who respect the law. I will also defer to the discussion we had earlier in terms of what the best practice is for rehabilitation, and look at those and determine what those are, and then get behind them. I think that's the way we need to move forward in terms of the state response to something like that. I will mention in terms of mental health, it is a function of the state government to make sure that mental health programs are available to people. I was thankful to become informed and get a tour of the mental health facilities here in town that receives state funding, and I was happy to receive some support from those groups that advocate for that, and I'm glad that they're on board with my campaign. But I also know that it's a balancing act, and every year the legislature gets together and they have their committees and they take the resources that they have with respect to the fact that we can't give anybody anything that we haven't taken from hardworking people in Oklahoma. And with respect to that fact, do the balancing act and then see how things get done most effectively.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. The next question is more balancing, I'm afraid. It's about senior citizens and their centers. The senior citizen numbers are growing, and many fit in the low-income categories, which means they eat poorly and they have poor health. Do you support more funding for Senior Citizen Center? Where would the money come from?
I'll take that first. I've been to several of the senior centers around, and I'm not exactly sure what that question is referring to in terms of, are they referring to places of community organizing and places of community? I
would gather from the comments about food, it's the ones that provide health food centers for people to come to for additional supplies, not a senior care center.
Okay. Well, I'm not aware of how much is allocated toward those centers and exactly where they're located and what they do. So I don't know that I'll give a really good answer to this question. But I do I'll defer as a conservative once again. A lot of these community organizations are better meeting those needs than what the state will ever be able to do. And so, as a conservative, we're going to look towards some of those things, be a bigger picture person, and then determine what's really best, a state government solution to all these things, or are we going to defer to those who are actually doing it better and serving people better?
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Mr. Tucker?
I think this is a quality of life initiative, and I think in Oklahoma we know that our quality of life is pretty bad. These are individuals, we're talking about the elderly, that have worked their whole life, that have paid into Social Security. We need to take care of them at every opportunity that we can. Maybe they lost their way. They didn't get the proper retirement that they should have. Who knows what happened to them, but we should take care of them. Food is essential. I think it's one of the most basic essentials of your day-to-day operations as a human being here in Oklahoma. And if you do not have access to that, we need to provide means for you to have access to that. And as my opponent stated, there are churches, there are other organizations out there, religious or secular, that are doing this, but we need to help them as a state, because what are we supposed to do as a state? We are supposed to take care of the general welfare of our people, and that is all of our people. From birth to end here in Oklahoma, we need to take care of them, and I think we need to provide more funding for that. Of course, that comes from reducing. I will tell you the Department of Commerce has a program called the Quality Jobs Program, and it is an uncapped program that provides job assistance payments for manufacturers. 28% are manufacturers and over 53%, I know that doesn't add up, but that's what the numbers I was given, are oil and gas companies. And these companies, most of them, I can tell you, they don't need assistance for creating some of these jobs. They're supposed to be technologically based, and most of the jobs they're creating are not technologically based. So how about we look at some of the oversight that we have and allocate those funds where they should be used?
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. This question is related to testing in private schools. I know that some private schools test students. Are they required to do so? Is it all right that the state of Oklahoma is not testing homeschooled and private school children?
I honestly think that, this kind of talks about testing across public and private education. Is, to me, when I was growing up, there was one test I had to look forward to, and that was the ACT and the SAT. And I think that is the true test if you're going to go to the next level. Does it define, who I was going to be when I took it and I got that score and I wasn't proud of? No. I had a football game the night before, and it was probably out too late. That's the truth. But I'm saying that these kids are working hard year-round. We don't need to judge them based off one test. And I can tell you from having big supporters in Oklahoma City who are Democrats and Republicans who operate community schools and private schools that they do test these individuals. Maybe it's not a state-issue test, but they're held to stricter, and I will say that again, stricter requirements than public institutions, because their funding, they do get funding from some public sources, and I'm telling you, it is a lot harder for them to continue to get that funding, and most of their day is out getting donations.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Dunlap.
For education, I wholeheartedly concur with Mr. Tucker's statement that we cannot determine the value of a student based on the outcome of one test. That is a system that was put into place, and thankfully, I think a vast majority of Oklahomans see the folly of that. And so I do not advocate the current A to F grading system that we've seen. I do advocate for responsibility. They are using your tax dollars, and so of course there has to be accountability to that use of funds. But we cannot base our resources, our allocations on the outcomes of these high-stakes tests. Now, we did take other tests in school, or at least I did, and those had their place in some things, but in terms of basing all sorts of information on this one test, it's not a good idea. I think the question had a second part, and I can't remember.
Well, it was kind of like, is it all right that the state of Oklahoma does not test homeschooled and private school children?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, I guess you answered that question. Well, we have gone through a lot of questions, almost the whole pile. Congratulations. So now we have time for your closing remarks, and we begin with Mr. Dunlap.
Thank you. As a closing, I just would like to tell a story of an encounter I had while I was campaigning early in the process. It was with a pastor over in Nowata County, and as somebody who spent a little bit of time in the ministry, I thought I would gain just an instant rapport and connection with this pastor. And as we started talking, he posed a question to me. He said, "What do you think the greatest need for our area is?" And as I gave some answer, and I don't remember what it was because it wasn't that good. But the pastor, I expected to say something along the lines of a religious nature, of a moral nature. And that pastor looked at me instead with the weight of his flock on the expression of his face and said, what we need for this area is opportunity. We need opportunity. My flock needs opportunity. And coming from a pastor, that meant a lot to me. And so I have done my best to orient my conversations and my research around those ideas. And I would like to, I'm very happy to accept the endorsement of a lot of the organizations that promote opportunity and opportunity growth in our state. And so the Chamber of Commerces from Oklahoma City and Tulsa have endorsed me. The Oklahoma Chamber has endorsed me. And so I'm thankful for some of the job creators such as Devon and Chesapeake and ConocoPhillips have come on board with my campaign. I'm very thankful because those are the opportunities that we want to be a part of and to promote. And also as a small business owner, I look to provide those opportunities through what I do as well. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm working towards that. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters once again, and thank you all for your interest and your care and concern for our great state.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Mr. Tucker.
You know, this has always been my dream. You know, I grew up in Oak Park, you know, pretty harsh conditions. My family, they were hardworking individuals. There was just a lot of us. There were 6 of us, so there were some tough times. But I always dreamed of being right here in front of you, coming home. You know, I went to school at Rogers State in Claremore. I spent some time at OU Law before accepting the nomination from the Democratic Party. And I can tell you, it's always been what I wanted to do. No one had to tell me to be here. No one did. It's always been in me. That's how my mom raised me. Do what you love. And the people are what I love. Sure, there was bigger, you know, financial opportunities for me in other states. And one where I was even in a jet, getting ready to accept a position for a lot of money, and then my friend calls me from the Democratic Party and says, do you want this? Now, the smart decision would have been take the money, live in Denver, not a lot of bugs in Denver, right? But I came home. Instead of taking the flight home from the company, I drove home 12 hours back here to Dewey and to Bartlesville because I wanted to be here for you. And I can tell you that I remember the State of Union's addresses that my mom and I used to watch. And I would stand in front of the mirror and think, one day that's going to be me. One day I'm going to lead the people. And I promise you that's what I am. I'm a leader. If I have an idea, I'm going to listen to people. I'm going to read about it. I'm going to do everything I can because I'm an intellectual. But I'm going to come up with a decision, and I'm going to live or die with it. It's not going to be anybody else's fault, and I will accept accountability for that. And I will tell you, I have vision. I've worked on economic development programs throughout this great state. I can tell you, Build Bartlesville here in Oklahoma, here in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, was a program that was struggling. And when I took over it, we won a national award for encouraging entrepreneurship. Most recently, I helped rebrand the entire county of Nowata and launch an initiative to improve the workforce and quality of life. And I would tell you that I'm endorsed by the middle class, and I'm endorsed by the people that are sitting in this room. And I did not accept any political action committee money, and that the amount of money I've raised is less than what his mom gave him.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. And thank you to everybody, to all the candidates tonight, the 2 gentlemen, Judge Dunlap, Mr. Mason, for State Representative, Mr. Dunlap, and Mr. Tucker. We want to thank the League of Women Voters of Bartlesville for the help with this, the candidates, the audience here, and all your really great questions. Those listening on KWON 1400 or watching on Cable 1. The City Administration, again, for supporting this forum by letting us use this facility, the Examiner Enterprise, and the local league with the candidate information sheet, which will be this Sunday, October the 26th. You need to check that out for candidate information for statewide races and the 3 state questions, so you'll understand what you're voting for on November the 4th. Plus, vote411.org, the league website. You can check that anytime, day or night, with your pajamas on or whatever, and find out the same information, and especially about those state races. I am reminded to tell you that we have a big turnout when it's a presidential election year. And we think, for your elections, I won't show up. But those are the elections that make a difference where you live, how they spend your state money, how they judge in your local courts. So do get out and vote on December the 4th. And I did this last night. I only have one joke.
November.
To use the league's favorite 4-letter word, vote. This concludes the League of Women Voters Forum for these candidates. Thank you very much.
That's our presentation of the League of Women Voters Forum with the candidates for District Judge and also for State House District Number 10. And again, Pat Nitzer Willard was the moderator for our forum tonight. And again, we will post this forum along with the one of last night on the website. It'll be on BartlesvilleRadio.com, so you can listen again if you choose. And of course, as the judge candidates mentioned, you can cast an in-person absentee ballot on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday prior to the election on November 4th. Our forum brought to you by Phillips 66.
At Phillips 66 Gas, we strive to bring you the best in performance gasoline. But now we want to find the Phillips 66 of other things, like staring champion Matt Miller. His stare is as powerful as an engine running on our gas. He can bore through a man's soul like our detergent additives can break through engine deposits.